The bees knew before she did. They lifted in a cloud from the third hive, the one nearest the road, the one her father called the sentinel hive because it reacted to disturbances the other colonies ignored. She watched the swarm from the kitchen window, already pulling on her boots. A cloud like that meant a vehicle, or a large animal, or a person. It was a person. He was lying face down on the road, 20 meters past the farm gate. His motorcycle, a battered Okada, the kind that plied the rural routes between villages, had gone off the edge and was resting on its side in the drainage ditch, one wheel still spinning slowly. He was not moving. Yemi Adeyemi pulled the veil from the hook by the door, wrapped it around her face and arms, a beekeeper's instinct, armor before investigation, and walked down the path. She was 23. She had lived on this farm since birth. Her father had died 2 years ago, heart, sudden, in the early morning between the 4th and 5th hive, and left her the land, the bees, the farmhouse, and a library of agricultural texts that she had read the way other women her age read romance novels, thoroughly, repeatedly, with emotional investment. She knelt beside the man, blood on his forehead, a gash, deep, running from his hairline to his left eyebrow. His arms were scraped raw. His shirt was torn. His breathing was shallow but present. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse, irregular, but there. "Can you hear me?" she said. Nothing. She looked at the motorcycle. No registration plate, removed or never attached. She looked at the man. No phone in his pockets, no wallet, no ID, nothing. She lifted his arm over her shoulder. He was heavy, not with fat, with bone and muscle, the kind of weight that belongs to a man who has used his body for work. She half-carried, half-dragged him up the path, past the sentinel hive, through the gate, into the farmhouse. She laid him on the bed in the back room, her father's room, unused since his death, the sheets still smelling faintly of eucalyptus oil and old soap. She cleaned the wound with boiled water and honey, medical-grade honey from her own hives, the kind that healed cuts faster than pharmacy antiseptic. She bandaged his forehead with strips of clean cloth. Then she sat in the chair beside the bed and waited. He woke 27 hours later. The room was dark, evening again, the following day. The kerosene lamp on the table threw warm, amber light across the ceiling. He turned his head, slowly, like a man testing whether his body still belonged to him. His eyes found her. "Where am I?" he asked. "My father's farm, 6 kilometers from the main road." "How did I get here?" "Your motorcycle went off the road. I carried you." He touched his forehead. "Found the bandage." His fingers were careful, precise, exploratory, as if cataloging damage by touch. "What's your name?" she asked. He was quiet for a long time. Not the silence of someone considering a lie. The silence of someone searching for something that should be there and finding only space. "I don't know," he said. She had read about this. Head trauma, anterograde amnesia, retrograde amnesia. The terms were in her father's medical reference book, the one she had studied after his heart attack, looking, too late, for symptoms she should have recognized. He remembered how to speak, he remembered how to walk, how to eat, how to use his hands. He could button a shirt, tie a rope, strike a match. But his name, his history, his people, gone. A clean erasure, as if someone had wiped a chalkboard and left only the frame. She should have taken him to the clinic. She should have reported it to the village authorities. She should have done the responsible thing. Instead, she gave him soup. She changed his bandage. She let him sleep in her father's bed for 3 days while his body remembered how to function and his mind remained silent on the subject of who he was. She called him the man in her head. Then, when that became awkward, she gave him a name. Taiwo, she said, on the 4th morning. He was sitting at the kitchen table, holding a cup of tea with both hands. The gash was healing. The honey had worked. His face was returning to its actual shape. Strong jaw, deep-set brown eyes, a nose that had been broken before and healed slightly left. Why Taiwo? He asked. It means the first to taste the world, she said. You're starting over. It seemed right. He looked at the name the way you look at a borrowed jacket, grateful, cautious, aware it doesn't quite fit, but understanding you need it. Taiwo, he said. Taiwo, she said. He recovered slowly. The headaches lasted 2 weeks, sharp, sudden, arriving without warning and departing the same way. She gave him honey water for the inflammation and bitter leaf tea for the pain. She knew these remedies because her father had used them on himself and because the bees had taught her that the natural pharmacy was more reliable than the one in town that was only open 3 days a week. He began moving around the farm on the 5th day. At first, just the courtyard, sitting on the wooden bench, watching the hives from a safe distance, learning the bees' schedules the way she had learned them, by attention. They're organized, he said on the 6th morning, watching the workers enter and exit the sentinel hive. They have a hierarchy, she said. Every bee knows its role. The ones at the entrance are guards. The ones carrying pollen are foragers. The ones fanning the entrance are ventilators. She adjusted a frame on the nearest hive with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing this since she was tall enough to reach. The queen doesn't give orders. She just exists. The colony organizes around her. He watched the bees for a long time. Something in his expression shifted. Not recognition exactly, but resonance. As if the organized precision of the hive was familiar to him in a way he couldn't explain. On the 8th day, he asked to help. I need to do something, he said. My hands need work. She hesitated. Not because she didn't trust him. She had watched him for a week, and her instincts, trained by a father who had taught her to read animals and weather and people with equal care, told her he was not dangerous. She hesitated because the bees didn't like strangers. Put these on, she said. She handed him the veil, the gloves, the suit. Her father's, too large for her but fitting him exactly. The coincidence was physical and complete. Her father's boots. Her father's hands. She took him to the 3rd hive, the sentinel hive. The bees rose in a cloud, the same cloud that had announced his arrival 8 days ago. Stand still, she said. Don't move. Don't breathe through your mouth. Let them learn you. He stood. The bees circled him, investigating, assessing. The cloud tightened, then loosened, then settled. One bee landed on his glove, then another. They've decided, she said. Decided what? That you can stay. Something crossed his face. A man with no past, accepted by 60,000 bees. Thank you, he said. Not to her, to them. She noticed, filed it, kept working. Weeks became a rhythm. He learned the bees the way she had learned them, not from books, but from presence. He learned to read the colony's mood by the pitch of the hum. He learned which frames to pull and which to leave. He learned to harvest honey without a single sting, a skill that had taken her 3 years and took him, inexplicably, 11 days. You've done this before, she said one afternoon, watching him uncap a frame with a heated knife, the wax peeling away in a single, clean curl. He looked at his hands. "I don't know." "Your hands know." He was quiet. The knife moved in his grip with a certainty that his mind couldn't explain, but his muscles remembered. Somewhere, in the life before the motorcycle and the road and the erasure, he had used his hands for precise, careful, delicate work. She wondered, sometimes, who he had been. The thoughts came late at night, when the farm was silent and the bees were settled, and she lay in her own bed listening to the sounds of a man sleeping in her father's room. A man whose real name she didn't know, whose people she couldn't contact, whose history was a blank page that she was filling, day by day, with the handwriting of this farm. She didn't look for answers. She told herself it was because the nearest clinic with any diagnostic capability was 40 kilometers away. She told herself it was because he was healing, gradually, and disruption would set him back. She told herself practical things. The truth was simpler and harder. She liked who he was without his past. She liked the man who helped with the bees and carried water without being asked, and sat on the bench at dusk watching the last foragers return. She liked the silence between them. Not empty silence, but the silence of two people working the same land and understanding each other through rhythm rather than language. She was afraid that his past, when it returned, would take this version of him with it. His memory came back in fragments. A word, Destiny. She heard him say it in his sleep on the third week. She didn't ask. He didn't remember saying it. A skill. One afternoon, he repaired the broken water pump, diagnosed the fault, dismantled the mechanism, replaced the washer with a piece of rubber he cut himself in under 20 minutes. She had been trying to fix that pump for 6 months. "You're an engineer," she said. He looked at his grease-covered hands. "Maybe." A reaction. A car backfired on the main road, a distant crack, sharp and sudden, and he dropped to the ground before she could blink. Not cowering, covering. The instinct of a man trained to respond to loud sounds in a specific way. She said nothing. He stood, brushed the dust from his knees. His hands were not shaking. Whatever he had been trained for, it had not left him. The name came back on the 42nd day. He was carrying a frame from the 4th hive, the one she called the stubborn hive because the queen was ornery and the guards were aggressive, when he stopped, stood still, the frame in his hands. "Kolade," he said. She turned. "What?" "My name." He was looking at the frame as if the honeycomb had written it. "Kolade Destiny." Silence. The bees hummed. The sun was high. "Kolade Destiny," she repeated, the way he had tested Taiwo 6 weeks ago. "I was a mechanical engineer," he said slowly, as if reading the words from a surface only he could see. "I worked in Port Harcourt. Oil infrastructure." His forehead creased. "I had a contract dispute. Someone didn't want me in the city." "Someone?" "I remember hands, a car, the road. Then nothing." She set down her tools, walked to him, took the frame from his hands, carefully, the bees still on it, and placed it back in the hive. "Do you remember people?" she asked. A long pause. "No family. I don't think I had family. Parents died early. No siblings." He looked at the farm, at the hives, at her. "I remember being alone." She looked at him. at a man whose past had returned and contained nothing that contradicted who he was now. Alone, precise, good with his hands, comfortable in silence. The past had come back, and it hadn't taken him away. He didn't leave the farm, not immediately. He said he needed time to think, to decide, to let the rest of the memories surface, if there were more. She said nothing about it either way. She continued with the bees. He continued with the bees. The rhythm held, but something had changed. The silence between them, the companionable, working silence that had defined their days, now had a different texture. It was no longer the silence of two strangers sharing a space. It was the silence of two people who understood something about each other and had not decided yet what to do about it. He began fixing things without being asked. The fence post that had been leaning for a year, the shutter on the kitchen window that banged in the wind, the storage shed roof that leaked in the first rains. He moved through the farm with the efficiency of a man who sees problems as things to solve, the engineer's instinct, and the gentleness of a man who understands that this place is sacred to someone and deserves to be treated accordingly. She watched him fix things. She didn't thank him. He didn't expect thanks. The exchange was wordless and complete. One evening, she found him in the storage shed building something. Shelves. Proper shelves. Measured, cut, sanded, joined for the honey jars. The existing arrangement was her own work, functional but chaotic, jars on boards across crates. His version was precise, level, beautiful in the way that precision is beautiful when it comes from hands that understand material. She stood in the doorway and watched him sand a joint. "You're building things," she said. "I need to use my hands." "Your hands have been busy." "I mean, use them for something that lasts." She looked at the shelves, at the joint he was sanding, at his hands, Colade's hands, an engineer's hands, the same hands that had worn her father's beekeeping gloves and earned the trust of 60,000 bees. "Stay," she said. He stopped sanding, looked at her. "I'm not asking because of the shelves," she said. "I'm asking because you fit here, in this place, with the bees, with the work." She paused. "With me." He held the sandpaper in his hand. The sawdust caught the light. "You've known me 6 weeks," he said.
"I knew the bees my whole life before I understood them," she said. 6 weeks with something real is longer than 6 years with something that isn't. He put the sandpaper down. "I have nothing to bring you," he said. "No money, no property, no name that means anything to anyone. I'm a man who woke up on your road with nothing." "You brought your hands," she said, "and your patience, and the fact that the Sentinel Hive, which stung my father 11 times the first year, accepted you in 3 minutes." He almost smiled. "The bees are biased." "The bees are never wrong." The storage shed smelled of sawdust and honey. The light through the single window was amber and warm. "Okay," he said. Not the word of a man with options. The word of a man who had been given something he had forgotten existed, and was holding it with both hands. The wedding was in the apiary, because where else would it be? Mama Funka, the village elder who had known Yemi's father and had strong opinions about everything, including the structural integrity of the fence, officiated. She stood between the 3rd and 4th hives in a wrapper that could have withstood a hurricane, and a headscarf that added a full foot to her already considerable height. The bees were calm, not drowsy, present. The specific frequency of a colony at peace. Yemi wore white, a simple cotton dress with her beekeeper's boots still on,
because the path to the apiary was muddy and vanity had limits. Her veil was looped around her wrist like a bracelet. Kolade wore her father's clothes, the ones that fit him exactly. The shirt pressed, the trousers clean, the boots that had walked this farm for 30 years, now carrying a different man on the same ground. The village children, who had been invited because excluding them was impossible, sat on the fence posts around the apiary, legs swinging, faces shining. Mama Funka looked at both of them, then at the bees, then at the sky, vast, clear, a harmattan sky that stretched without limit. "I have known this farm since before this girl was born," Mama Funka said. "I have known these bees, and I have never, in 73 years, seen a colony accept a stranger the way they accepted this man." She looked at Kolade. "The bees don't read CVs. They don't check references. They decide with their bodies whether something belongs." She paused. "You belong." Kolade spoke. "I came to this farm with nothing. No name, no past, no identity. Just a body on a road and a woman who could have left me there and called the clinic and moved on with her life." His voice was steady. "She carried me into her father's house. She put honey on my wound, the same honey from the bees I now tend every morning. She gave me a name when I had none. She gave me work when I needed my hands to remember they were still useful." He looked at Yemi. "I don't know much about who I was, but I know exactly who I am. I'm the man who tends the sentinel hive. I'm the man who fixes things that are broken. And I'm the man who was found by someone who didn't need a reason to carry a stranger. She just did it because it was in front of her, and she's the kind of person who doesn't walk past." He paused. "I don't have a past to offer you, so I'm offering you the future instead. Every morning, every hive, every day I can build something that lasts, I'll build it here." Yemi's jaw tightened. She breathed in through her nose, slowly. "My father spent his whole life on this farm," she said. "He knew every bee. He knew every tree. He knew the land the way you know a person, by showing up every day and paying attention." She looked at Kolade. "You showed up on my road with nothing, and in 6 weeks you learned what took him a lifetime. How to stand still and let the bees decide." She held his gaze. "The bees decided. So did I." Silence. The hum of the colony, the children on the fence posts, the harmattan light falling clean and warm across the apiary. Mama Funke wiped her face with the edge of her wrapper and cleared her throat. "Then it's done," she said. "Feed the man some honey." The children cheered. The bees lifted, briefly, a cloud, the way they'd lifted the day he arrived, then settled. A recognition, a decision, a welcome repeated. They walked back to the farmhouse together. His hand found hers on the path, between the second and third hive. Her fingers closed around his. Careful, precise, the way you hold something you've decided is valuable, but haven't quite finished understanding yet. The sentinel bees watched them go. The hive hummed at its steady frequency. The farm continued, as it always had, as it always would, in the specific rhythm of things that grow slowly and last. Thanks for watching. If someone gave you a second chance when they didn't have to, this one is for them. Tell us where you're watching from today.